Okay, this is the first one of these that I have ever done, that we have ever done at Section 1904. Hopefully it's not the last. We'll see how it goes. This is an idea that was born on Blue Sky. I'm calling it the comment section, and it is when a subscriber to the Section 1904 podcast calls us out and has something to say that we didn't say, or contrary to something that Darren and I talked about. Joining me today, and I know there's a lot of people who have been looking forward to this. I've been getting DMs asking when this is happening. Joining me today is Mens Rea, Mency for short. I believe on Blue Sky he is actually Mency, with a picture of Melanie's ass. I'm assuming that's Melanie Morahone's ass as his avatar, because it says Morahone across a pair of jeans. I would suspect that was posted by her. And that you just took that and made that your avatar, because that's a very mature thing to do. Before we go any further, Mens Rea, welcome to the show. How you doing? You told me before I hit record this was your first podcast ever. Are you nervous?
Oh, no, I'm not nervous, but I am honored to be on my first podcast with Sir Lord Podcast himself.
I guess I am still kind of Lord Podcast. I don't think I can ever get away from that nickname unless I go and do something else, make a different career in a different industry, and people forget about that.
No, it'll stick.
Yeah, forever and ever. So you sent us a message on Blue Sky about a week ago, and I'm gonna read your message word for word, and then we will discuss, because I think this is a very, very interesting conversation to me personally, and maybe it's interesting to other people as well. You said, "Hey, Section 1904. Saying that fans should like this team simply because of the win-loss record is a reductive take. There are so many reasons to like a team. Maybe we liked the 2016 team because they played hard and then wore gold testicle necklaces in the locker room. Personally, I've lost interest in this team because A.J. Preller traded away young bedrock players who I followed for years for a bunch of overpaid mercenaries from other teams." And then you said, also, it's chicken shit to say you're above this conversation on social media, and then immediately run to your podcast to talk about it. Which I guess fair. Darren pulled me into that. I wasn't intending on talking about it on the podcast, but it's an interesting take, because I have heard before from people that, a team owner has destroyed their fandom. I've heard from people that a coach has destroyed their fandom. A coach has destroyed my fandom before. I've never heard that a general manager, while the team was improving and becoming more of a contender to win a championship, that GM had ruined someone's fandom. And specifically, I think most people associate fandom with star power. And what you kind of said was like all the guys who were coming up were traded away for stars. Now, you called them overpaid mercenaries, but they were traded away for stars, and that made you mad. So the floor is yours. This is a podcast. We have plenty of time. If you would like to expound upon your several Blue Sky posts and explain, I'm interested to hear why you're not a Padres fan anymore. What led you to here?
Well, I've always been a fan of not just the Padres Major League roster. I've always been a fan of the entire organization. I have a Matt Bush autographed jersey in my closet. I've been a fan of the minor. I followed the players from when they were drafted through the minors to when they make their debut. And so, I realize I'm in the minority here when it comes to fandom.
Right.
But I've always followed all the players from up and down the organization. I was at Petco when Josh Barfield sprinted out of the dugout at his major league debut. And, I had followed him all along his entire career, and it was exciting to see that, And I've been a loyal Mad Friars subscriber for years. And so for me as a Padre fan, the major league roster usually wasn't that good. And so out of necessity, I had to follow the minor league teams. And so usually after the Padres got beat, I would go check the minor league box scores. And the way that I follow the team, it was nice because it was always an eternal spring of hope, because there was always somebody coming up, a new wave of talent. And so I bought into that. And so when Paul DePodesta back in the day would blog about each draft pick, that was like my heaven. I got info on all of them. And so I've always been a fan of the minor leagues. And then Preller comes along And setting aside what happened in 2014, 2015, and I'm actually wearing right now the In Preller We Trust shirt
Of course
on
you are.
today, big day, yeah. But starting in 2015 to 2016, he really sold us on the tank method that they were going to build from within. I don't know if you recall that season ticket um, holder presentation. It was on the field, and on the big screen they had like that PowerPoint and what their plan was. And I couldn't find any pictures of it, but it was we're going to build from within. We're going to be like so and so, and it actually talked about the first wave of prospects. And so that really I didn't start following the prospects because of that, but that kind of fed into my type of fandom. And so something happened, I don't know, in 2020, it diverted from that, and he stopped using prospects as future major league players in the team to a currency that he would then use to get these big stars and bring them in. And I just every year he's traded away prospects that I've followed, and it just kind of each time it's just a little chipped away, chipped away, chipped away to where I'm just kind of like dead inside at this point. Like it feels like it's not my team. I feel disconnected, and I know that sounds ridiculous to most people. And I'm not saying the way that I do it is the right way. I mean, John, the entire our entire method of fandom is kind of ridiculous in its nature. I mean, we've never met Manny Machado, we've never met James Wood, we've never met any of these prospects, but it's ubiquitous. I mean, we still find our teams and we find our players and we like them for whatever reason. It's based on feeling. And so the feeling that I have is this is the entire organization. I wanted to see the team come up in waves and grind it out down in the minor leagues, come up together and then add with free agents. And the way that this team has been built with with players from other teams, I follow a player for years and then suddenly he's traded for somebody who I've never heard of. I look him up on Fangraphs, 5 minutes ago. I didn't even know. And at the time, we look, was that a win? Did we win that trade or did we lose that trade? But I think that ignores the larger picture because I think that there's damage that this does to the team and my fandom more than just each single trade, whether it's win or lose. I think that when you have a team of veterans instead of guys that have come up together, I think that builds a team that lacks resilience. I think you have a patchwork of different veterans. They come from different teams. Those other teams have different philosophies. What is Preller's philosophy? What is his minor league philosophy that he then builds and pushes up to the major league roster? I have no idea. What is a Preller guy? I have no idea what that is. And so you have this patchwork of these players, these veterans. And when I say overpaid, I don't mean what the market says. For all I know, one WAR equals $12 million per year. I don't know whether they're overpaid, but I do know that they've got their money. They're not hungry. They've got their big check. It's guaranteed. And so you've got these guys who have got their money. They're from other teams that came from different organizational philosophies. Meanwhile, the players that I followed for years are sprinkled across. I'm seeing them now in all-star games and home run derbies. And at this point, I feel disconnected from the team. I don't root for just a name on the front for no reason. I don't have an allegiance to the team to where I have to, root for them no matter what I do, whatever they do. This team has to, I'm the customer, and if I don't like it, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I'm not saying I'm going to root for a different baseball team. I'll never do that. But I have lost interest in the team and I guess baseball in general because of what this team has become over the years. So I don't know. And I think John, what that tweet originally came, or tweet skeet, I should say, came from was, I think somebody on Twitter showed a picture of the old player 91 from 2016 and saying, do you really want to go back to those old days? And I think that's just a that's just a false dichotomy. Like you can't compare 2016 to now because that was a completely different payroll. I mean, they had a $70 million payroll. Yes, they had scrubs and they were tanking at the time. And the only reason why there's any success on this team now is because of Peter Seidler and the budget. I mean, AJ Preller has a massive budget to work with, and he's got a team of stars because that's what the owner paid for. No, I think, in my opinion, you could have a chimp with a pointer, go through a major league roster with $260 million to spend, and you would get a team of some stars put together. And I feel like that's what we have here. And when you compare this roster now, oh, we're relevant, we have these stars. It's not because of anything AJ Preller done, and in fact, it's what they've overcame of the trades that he's done to have this roster of stars that he's just kind of randomly put together that suddenly now as a fan I'm supposed to root for. And I'm sick of it. It's a patchwork. There's no overarching strategy. There's no sustainability to it. So I don't know. I've really stopped following today. I didn't even really follow all the trades that went down. I heard he traded away DeVries. Shocker, and when they signed DeVries, I didn't even really, by that time I knew that he was just a goner because that's what he does to every single prospect. And it happened today. So I didn't really have any heartbreak today over him leaving because I never really got invested with him.
Okay. So I understand that to a certain extent. Like, I'm a big believer in narratives, right? And fans care more about teams filled with players that they know, they understand, they have history with. They can remember them in the very beginning. They can remember, that time that they went through a slump. They can remember that time they got injured. They can remember that time that they had to learn a lesson, whatever it was. I get that. And actually, I feel like the Padres still have that. That to me is me describing Fernando Tatis's career and now Jackson Merrill's career. And so they're not completely gone, but I think what you're describing is actually the difference between a team owner who cared about how can I save the most money versus a team owner that was actually how can I make the most money, and a believer of, you got to invest in it and then you'll get it back. And from 2008 to 2020, before 2020 through 2019, they had one winning season. One. And trust me, I know I was doing Padres Hot Tub with Craig Elson all the way back in 2015. And every year we would talk about how the Padres were actually stuck in this murky middle where they weren't bad enough to get the number one pick, but they weren't good enough to even be a 500 team, which meant that all of their games were essentially meaningless. They were just, let's throw the young kids out there and get them reps and hope that they can figure it out. And sometimes that worked, but most times it didn't because you didn't have 25 guys on the roster who were all young, all cheap, and all good. And so what you would end up is with these situations and where the young guys would get enough playing time, the guys that were good would be ready to be on a winning team. And the Padres didn't have one for them. And the Padres were not profitable as a bad team to pay them. And you'd end up in these situations like Jake Peavy and Adrian Gonzalez, where the team would sign them to these big contracts and go, now we have to trade them because we know we can't afford them. And because it's absolutely pointless to pay Adrian Gonzalez and Jake Peavy $20 million plus a year to be the best player on a bad team. Because all they're doing is keeping us from tanking, which is what we need to do. And here's the thing about AJ Preller. I don't know that AJ Preller ever lied. I think that the marketing guys, the Mike D's of the world, were like, well, we can't tell everybody that you're going to use your scouting eye to develop prospects just constantly and trade them off for superstars that can be under team control for a few years. We can't tell them that. So instead, we're going to give them hope that this player you're watching on this team that's going to win 65 games, in a couple years, this whole team will be built around them and they'll win 90 games. And there was just no truth to that. And I think they were kind of blatantly lying. And this is why like HJ goes on his thing where he's like, we were promised that if we followed along with the tanking long enough, that it would result in World Series wins. And I think he's kind of discounting the Dodgers of it all. But I understand that premise, but I think you guys are just mad because you got lied to and didn't realize it, if that makes sense. Like, at the end of the day, Preller walked in the door and basically gave away the farm system for superstars. And then he never really stopped doing that. He was like, yeah, we're gonna tank, and we're going to bring people in, and we're going to sign these kids as 15-year-olds in the international market. And we're going to do all that so we can generate all this talent, this young, promising talent. And then we're going to turn them into superstars. And there's a couple reasons why I think they do that. And one of which is the thing I just said, which is like, it's impossible to get all these guys on the same level. Yeah, you're watching CJ Abrams and you're watching James Wood and you're watching Mackenzie Gore and they're all good. You know what? The Nationals fucking suck. And like, I don't think it's fun to watch a team that fucking sucks with like 3 good players, because what happens is today there was rumors that there was teams trying to trade for Mackenzie Gore and the Nationals were listening. You know why they're listening? Because there's no point in having Mackenzie Gore on a bad team. And I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is, A, they know that they can drop almost any pitcher into a Padres uniform and put them in Petco Park and they're going to be fine. So why would you pay big bucks? Why would you worry about developing one and trying to keep them through your whole career? Why can't you just, grab? And for years they did this. We're going to grab this guy at the scrap heap 1 year. And it was good, but it led to some down years where they couldn't land the guys. So then they were like, okay, now we're going to grab Musgrove and we're going to make him better and we're going to sign him to a long-term deal and we're going to grab Cease and he's going to look better and whatever. But one of the issues they have is the discrepancy between hitting in El Paso and hitting at Petco Park is so large that you would have a good prospect. I will use an example. Luis Arias. No, not Luis Arias. Luis Urias. Luis Urias would be in El Paso raking and hitting home runs. And everyone would be like, here we go. We got a superstar. And then he would get to Petco Park and it'd be like, never mind. This is just the El Paso thing. Exactly what happened earlier this year with Tirso Ornelas. Wow, this kid, he can really friggin' slug. And then he gets to Petco Park and he can't. And the Padres are like, they know that everyone is looking at that going, oh, that El Paso thing's not real. That can't possibly be real. That thing in Petco where he can't hit, that's real. And so I think Preller has started getting nervous. First of all, I feel like 2020, he's one of those people, not really in the MAGA sense, but I think he's one of those people who completely lost his mind because baseball shut down, college baseball shut down, minor league baseball shut down. There was nowhere for him to travel around and like scout like every day. And I think he kind of lost his mind. But I think he also came to this conclusion of like, my prospects are worth so much more in AA than they are in the majors. And we now have a team that is built to win and compete. And you can't call these guys up and just throw them in the middle of that and expect them to be on the same level as Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado and Jackson Merrill and et cetera, et cetera. Now, do I think that AJ Preller has made mistakes? Absolutely. Do I think that he's overpaid certain guys and handed out contracts that he shouldn't have? Yes. Do I think that's true of probably every GM in baseball? I do. I also think like I'm looking at the 2016 team. Actually, I'm looking at the 2016, 2017, 2018 teams on Baseball Reference. And Baseball Reference has a thing where they tell you who the top player was on the team that year. We're just going to run through some of these. Actually, let's go back. The top player on the 2012 Padres, who won 76 games, was Chase Headley. Sure. The 2013 Padres, who won 76 games, their best player was Chris Denorfia. The 2014 Padres, their best player was Seth Smith. 2016, Will Myers. 2017, the best player on the team, I don't remember how to say this guy's name. I swear to God. Do you remember how to say this guy's name? Is it Julius Chassin? Is that it? The pitcher?
Yeah.
He was the
Hasim, I
best.
think. Yeah.
Shasid, he was the best player on a 71 win team. In 2018, the best player on the team was Hunter Renfroe. They won 66 games, and I think he's out of baseball now. Like, I understand that it was really heartwarming to have Hunter Renfroe be the left fielder, right fielder, and hitting dongs on the roof and all that stuff. But like, man, give me Fernando Tatis Jr. over that any freaking day of the week. Even if they had traded for Fernando, or give me Xander Bogaerts even over Everth Cabrera. Like he's a better baseball player. He's more exciting. He gives them more of a chance. And like I think I'm the more standard fan in that, like, I'm just a big believer that like whatever helps the major league team helps the franchise and makes my life more enjoyable. And it's interesting to me that you don't view it the same way, which leads me to this question. And I know for several reasons we're keeping personal information off here. So don't give up any personal information in this story. But I do have to ask you, how did you end up this kind of fan where you care more about the prospects in the minors than you do about the success of the major league team?
I don't know. I think I follow all of my sports teams this way. It's the same way with the Golden State Warriors and my Washington Commanders. I follow their drafts and I follow it from the very beginning. And you know what? I lost interest in my Golden State Warriors when they traded for Durant. It's like at that point, it's like, oh, come on. And so maybe that's what's happening here. I stopped following them for a number of years when they had Durant. But I want to go back to what you said about not being able to fit the prospects into the major league roster. That's a skill issue. That's a Preller issue. If he can't fit his own prospects into the major league roster and integrate them, that's a him problem. And I don't think it's solved by trading them away for players from other organizations at the time. And I think one thing that can't go ignored here, you mentioned the bad contracts. I mean, it's like yes, other teams have signed bad contracts, but not to the extent that AJ Preller has. I mean, we waited out the Will Myers contract, we waited out the Eric Hosmer contract, and then he goes and does the same damn thing over and over and over again. And so he's traded away all the young talent that would be foundational to this team, young cheap talent, for these overpaid veterans, and then he signs them for a decade and locks them up with no trade clauses. And yes, some of them are great. I love Manny Machado. The second contract was stupid, but I love him. But honestly, even the most beautiful woman in the world has a guy who's tired of sleeping with her. I mean, it's, after a while, you look across the dinner table for somebody after 10 years of when they've been dogging it on the field, you get a little tired of him. And so, he's locked up this team to where now you can't fit any young talent into it because it's locked up for the next 10 years with a bunch of overpaid veterans. And I wish we had a new general manager who took over after the tank. A lot of teams, they have a tank general manager and then they have a general manager who steps in and really manages the team on their major league level when they're ready to start competing. And I wish after 2019, when we had the number one farm system, we had Peter Seidler about to spend 9 figures and really put some money into the team, and we had a really sharp general manager, and we would have it. I think any good manager, if they had a 5-year tank, 5 years to tank, and then $200 million to spend, that should result in a championship roster. And this whole fighting for wild card 3 every year after the decade that we've been put through and the money that has been spent is just ridiculous. He's one of the longest tenured general managers out there, especially among those who have never won a World Series, or even, an NL West, it's been a long time. And so I think the lack of success, it only underscores the frustration that I've had with him. And I think it makes me feel like it's just not my team anymore.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a comp. I'm going to give you 2 comps. One is mine and one is from our buddy H.J. Preller, and I want to see how you feel about both of them. The first one is one that I actually made back in like 2016, 2015, where I compared the AJ Preller Padres to the mid-aughts Detroit Tigers, who were an absolute laughingstock for years and years and years, winning 50 games, 40 games, 50 games, 60 games, 70 games, just like the Padres. And then one year they were like, we're going to take it seriously. And they signed a bunch of free agents to big deals, right? They signed Kenny Rogers to a massive deal. They signed Pudge Rodriguez to a massive deal. They signed someone else. What is that guy's name? El Caballo. Carlos Lee. They signed Carlos Lee to like a huge deal. They traded for Curtis Granderson, or maybe they had Curtis Granderson. They traded him. And they did this thing where they were like, we have some young talent and we're going to sign these guys in like contracts that they wouldn't normally sign with the Detroit Tigers, but we gave them so much in the contract that it was impossible for them to say no. And over a 7-year span, they went to the World Series twice. They went to the playoffs over 9 years. They went to the playoffs 5 times. And it was a team that, had Miguel Cabrera. It was also a team that had, a young Max Scherzer, a young Justin Verlander. And they had that kind of mix. I still feel like the Padres are that team, because you can sit here and be like, well, he trades away all the young players and blah, blah, blah. Jackson Merrill's 22 years old, buddy. There was someone else I was looking at. Randy Vasquez is 26. I know Ryan Berger got traded today. He's 25. Jeremiah Estrada's 26. Like they have these younger guys that they're willing to bring up to fill the gaps. And also while they ride on the back of these star players. And I think that's the right mix. So that's my comp. The comp that HJ has given, another guy who needs anonymity with his name, is I was talking to him the other day and he was like, we were promised that if we stuck through the tanking, we'd get World Series, and we don't have a World Series. That's just kind of like his, how as succinctly as he can state his position about why he kind of hates this team now and why he kind of hates this front office now is they didn't fulfill the promise they made to him. And he said, we went through all that, the tanking and everything else, to just be the Milwaukee Brewers. And by that, he means a team that has not made the World Series, that no one really looks at the Brewers and goes like, oh, watch out for the Brewers. You get them in the playoffs and they're going to go on a run and they're going to be dominant, because he's like, the Brewers are always just like, even when they try their best, they're just kind of the little brother. I disagree with that comp, but do you think the Padres are more in the category of the Detroit Tigers of 20 years ago, or the kind of modern day Milwaukee Brewers?
Oh, look, it's a results-based business. I mean, I think you have to look at the results, and I think that we're definitely more like the Brewers than what the Tigers were. I barely even follow the AL, so they're not coming. The Tigers are not immediately coming to mind. But the fact that you mentioned 2 World Series, that sounds like a distant dream to this team.
I mean, they lost them both, but they were there.
Yeah. Well, we've been celebrating 98 for how long? I mean, we would be more than happy with an appearance in the World Series.
Yeah, and I don't think it's as far away as everyone thinks it is. Like, I understand that the series against the Dodgers last year didn't end well, but there was a few moments there where it looked like it was going well, and then some things didn't go their way. I don't know. I don't think this team is as far away as everyone thinks it is. Just because they haven't gotten to the World Series doesn't mean that they can't. And I don't know. I like this team. I like where they're at. I've enjoyed a couple years of, every game matters and they make it to the playoffs and anything can happen. And it is strange to me to see like some of the most diehard fans that I've known basically be like, screw this team. They're not doing the thing they promised, or they're not doing it the way that I want them to. Because like you said, it's a results-based business. The results are wins. This has been, I looked this up last week and I thought we were going to talk to each other. The last 10 years, or did I do 5 years? I did 5 years. This 5 year span, and I combined this season up to the point last week. I combined that with 2020, and it equaled like 160 games, not 162 games. But I combined that, and then I added in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. That 5 year span of full regular season baseball, the Padres' winning percentage over that 5 years far exceeds their winning percentage of any other 5 year period in the team's history. When you just look at regular season wins, this includes 96, this includes 98, this includes the mid 80s, this includes Tony Gwynn's entire career. And so my question to you is, does it not matter if they win if they don't win the way you want them to?
No, it's not. Wins are one criterion. I mean, but they're not end all be all for me. I mean, I think it's a long season, and we root for like I said before, we root for teams for a number of reasons. Some people root for teams for uniforms, and so it's a feel thing. And yes, wins are great, but there's not a direct correlation between wins and my enjoyment of a team. I mean, you can even look at the Cubs for decades. I mean, people love the Cubs, but they weren't that good. And to be honest with you, if you look at the attendance from those lean years for the Padres, they were still drawing well. If the 2016 team won 68 games and they were top 15 in attendance, and so they're doing well now with the crowds, and certainly people vote with their feet. But I think Petco has always been like that in a lot of ways.
Well, and so, there's a difference between getting 2.1 million people through the gates and 3.3 million. Like it's a big difference.
Yeah. No. Yeah, totally. I don't know. For me, I root as a fan for big picture stuff, for the organization, for smart decisions. And those trades I'm sure today was a lot of fun, nice, new, shiny things for people to go check out on Fangraphs. And does this player have a higher WAR than that player? Oh, we won the trade. This is great. I just don't dig it. It's not my thing. I root for teams, and I have rooted for the Padres for different reasons. And when I rooted for the minors during the Kevin Towers years, that wasn't great either. Matt Bush drafts and things like that. But we finally started to draft well. And I also think from a major league level, it's hard to undervalue how important those young players are on a championship roster. Players that are pre-arb, that are making $500,000 a year, if they have one WAR, that is a massive success. That is a huge surplus. And so and that's where the depth comes from, is those minor league players coming up and playing big roles and small roles. It doesn't need to be just all stars and scrubs. Those pre-arb players that can play a small role and contribute on a cheap level are massively important. They may not have big names, but that one WAR that they put up for $500,000 is a huge surplus that I think always goes overlooked by fans. And that, instead they look for the star power.
Okay. Last thing, and I promise I didn't do this on purpose. I clicked on a random year, and I was like, this seems like the year that you were talking about. Josh Barfield put up a 3.1 WAR in 2006. Can we talk about the 2006 team?
Yeah, he put up 3 WAR. I'm shocked.
I know he had one.
He was that good.
He had one great year. That was it. I think it was his second year. Yeah. I'm going to read off some of the names on this team, and I just want you to think about maybe their counterpoints on the current roster. The catcher of the 2006 San Diego Padres was Mike Piazza. The first baseman was Adrian Gonzalez, who they traded for. They traded a good pitcher to get Adrian Gonzalez. Josh Barfield, who they drafted and developed. Khalil Green, who they drafted and developed. 38-year-old Vinny Castilla, signed as a free agent. 34-year-old Dave Roberts, I don't remember how they got him. 33-year-old Mike Cameron. 35-year-old Brian Giles, who they traded Xavier Nady for. On the bench, these guys giving you one WAR, 33-year-old Jeff Blum, 31-year-old Mark Bellhorn, 39-year-old Eric Young Sr., 33-year-old Todd Walker, 30-year-old Russell Branyan, 30-year-old Termel Sledge,
Brandon was the big acquisition that year in the offseason.
35-year-old Doug Mirabelli. If you look at the starting rotation,
Dougie.
Jake Peavy, 25, great. Clay Hensley, I didn't realize Clay Hensley had a 29 start season in him, but he did. Good for Clay, 2.3 WAR. Chris Young, another guy that they traded to get. 39-year-old Woody Williams, 33-year-old Chan Ho Park. In the bullpen, you had 36-year-old Alan Embry. You had 38-year-old Trevor Hoffman closing games. You had 39-year-old Doug Brokale and 43-year-old David Wells still kicking around for a couple years there. And I think this was shortly after Greg Maddux. This team also had Sean Estes and 37-year-old Rudy Cians. I don't remember how to say his name either. I'm telling you, these teams you remember are filled with these guys, these old mercenaries who were making too much money. The difference is, I think when you think of, and when other people like you, because you're not alone, when other people like you think of a $250 million roster, they think of the 1998 Yankees. And they're like, why can't we just develop all of our players, pay all of our players, and win championships that way? Hell, the Golden State Warriors did it before they got Kevin Durant. That is almost impossible. It's almost impossible. That's why teams try and do both. You try and develop the young talent, your Fernando Tatis and your Jackson Merrills, and you try and sign your Manny Machados and trade for your Juan Sotos, et cetera, et cetera. It's a mix of all of these things. The only teams that are nothing but homegrown prospects are usually bad teams for a very, very long time. And usually those teams develop really bad habits that don't turn into good teams later. Anyway, I've taken up a lot of your time, but I would love to hear your response to my breakdown of the 2006 Padres before I let you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that was Kevin Towers. I mean, he didn't figure out the bullpen until he got to spring training, and realized what he had and then went and scrambled and got some guys together. I mean, he was always a fly by the seat of your pants, but I also think that, he also couldn't draft. And so I think that the way that roster was put together was out of necessity.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's why, but, I'm also I'm not opposed to signing free agents. And I think a lot of those were free agents, David Wells and I don't know if Maddux was there at the time, Mike Piazza was. And so, no, I mean, that's great. But I'm not saying that free agents are mercenaries. I'm just saying that it's when you trade away the groups, the way, when you trade away your waves of prospects, you're trading away your foundation of what your organization means. What does your organization stand for? That's when the traits that you want to value, that's when you really embed that within those players over the course of years when they're in the minor leagues, so that when they come up, they have this organizational philosophy that they all know and understand. And so when you trade that away, that's when you get anyways, I'm rambling now, but that's when you start to get players of other organizations that have different philosophies. So I think it's not just, yeah.
I get what you're saying. I think there's like maybe 4 baseball teams in all of baseball that you could describe that way. And some of them are the Tampa Bay Rays, who once a player gets good enough, they trade him away because they can't afford him. And the other one's like the Dodgers and maybe the Giants. Like even the Yankees and the Mets, they don't do a good job developing their own talent. The Red Sox a little bit. I get where you're coming from. I think everyone has, their own relationship with AJ Preller, trading away every prospect that the team has. Yeah. But I look at it as, maybe smart. Look how far it's got him. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on your first ever podcast. This has been a good conversation. I'm sure I could go on for another hour, just because I'm intrigued by people who view things through a different lens than me. And yours is definitely an intriguing one. And I'm sorry for what the Padres have done to you, because no, I mean that. Like, it's, I as someone who follows you on social media, like the Padres and craft beer were a very big part of the reasons I follow you. And the last I checked, you no longer care about the Padres and you don't drink craft beer anymore. And it's like, I feel bad for you. I hope that this has all been very rewarding and you're a happier person for it. But like, taking away joys that people have is a cruel, cruel thing to do. And I'm sorry that the universe did that to you.
No, I have plenty of other interests. I'm a Washington Commanders fan, so we have Jaden Daniels now, so I'm good to go. But thank you.
Oh,
And I'm
is
a
that still the team name
for now it
for
is, yeah,
now?
yeah. That's our Washington football team. I'll go with that.
There you go.
But John, I'm a big fan of your and Darren's work. You know, I'm a subscriber. I love the project that you guys have. It's great. I listen, I read. So, and I was happy to be here with you.